Not seeing
Recording in
anything.
progress.
I'm going to head right into the review of the FY24 budgets. And first up, we have under Health and Human Services, Council on Aging. And I believe we have Jennifer Claro here. Jennifer, is there any sort of overview you'd like to give us on this budget? Any major differences?
No, I think the most significant, of course, is, we are trying to increase the salary of our transportation dispatcher as well as our drivers. And we've also included our first full-time driver. I think that's the most significant change in this budget.
Okay, thanks. Anyone have any questions for Jennifer? Okay, not seeing anything. Thank you, Jennifer. That was easy. And on to veteran, yeah, on to veteran services. I don't see Ryan, but does anyone have any questions? Okay, not seeing anything there either. Actually, I did have a question. Maybe Dan, you can answer this. If not, we can get it later.
Sure.
I noticed that the FY22 actuals for veteran services had 0 for the tax credit.
That's right. For both the Council on Aging and for the veterans, we didn't run the program because of COVID for that year. So
Gotcha.
it's starting back up this year. Correct, Jennifer?
That's correct.
All right.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, on to public safety, police department. I see Chief Chambers.
Good
Would you like to
evening,
give us
everyone.
just a brief overview?
I'd love to.
Thank you.
So the request for fiscal 24 is an increase of 4.65% overall, with the personnel services at about 4.3%. That is just because of an increase due to recently settled contracts with the Superior Officers Union, the Regular Police Officers Union, and the OPEIU, the vowel one. And then the expenses went up by 8.18%, mainly with utility increases, primarily gasoline, and the increase to the cost of cruisers. We did not change the upfits at all. It's just the cost of the cruisers have increased dramatically over the past several years. That's it.
Thanks. Anyone have questions?
Yeah, hold on, I got one.
Yeah, Dennis.
All right, so let me hand it up here. Hold on. I got it. How are you, Chief? How you doing?
I'm good, Dennis. How about yourself?
Good. Can you give us a little? I know that we haven't had a chance to see the activity reports yet, but can you just give us an overview of what sorts of demands you're facing with regards to crime, other incidents, traffic, and any assaults, just so we get an idea. Are they increasing, stabilizing? How's your demand going?
So I would say, since I've been involved in this process, I think, Dennis, you've asked for those amounts over the past several years, 4 or 5 years. They remain fairly consistent. I think what we see is sometimes we'll see the officer-initiated activity, or the numbers that are affected by officer-initiated activity will fluctuate depending on what our staffing levels are at. But for the most part, it's relatively stable and has been for the past several years. One of the things that we do see over the past several years, though, is an increase in time on call. I know that I have spoken with you and John about this, so in the past, just the demand of service. It's not just handling the call, but it's handling the call in the right way and making sure that we're still citizen service based. But the overall numbers, Dennis, generally, they do fluctuate a little bit, but for the most part, you don't see any big spikes. The one thing that maybe has increased over the past couple of years has been the requirement for search warrants. They've kind of gone up over the past couple of years. They stabilized over the past 2, I believe, just for something as simple as trying to get the IP address on some of our computer frauds requires a search warrant now, whereas it used to just be a real quick subpoena. So quick summary.
So the other thing too, how about the, just so we covered, how about the opioid situation? Are you experiencing stable numbers for overdoses, or are they increasing or decreasing as well?
I would say that they've been relatively stable as far as the overdose numbers. I think we did get a few more this year than we did last year, but we're still in single digits. Obviously, any is too many, but we are working with the opioid committee now and the health department on trying to get some additional resources available for handouts when we encounter those types of incidents. Chief Targ and I we're actually just going back and forth with Ray Dick today about that.
So the question I have, what's your operational experience now with the hybrids, now that you've had them for a year?
Well, we actually, they've got approved a year ago. We didn't, our first one didn't get put into service until June. So the information on them is limited. The first 3 that we got in all kind of came in the end of June, beginning of July. We did have some issues with the electrical work where we had 2 out of the 3 cruisers, our first cruisers, hybrids, had they'd just be driving down the road and they'd lose all power and stop, and we had to tow them a couple times. But over the past couple months, we've gotten all of that figured out. We have, I believe we have our full complement now of 5 hybrids. So the 3 from last year, we should be up to 6. We're waiting on 1 right now. But it has made a difference. I know that one of the questions that prior to the meetings that was asked had to do with the fuel consumption. We don't have a ton of information, but I tried to pull it out by cruiser. Just today, they closed out. I went through a couple of the most recent closeouts, and it's about 5.5 miles per gallon more that we're getting with hybrid cruisers. So the more we have online and the more consistent that those are running, the more savings that we should see in our anticipated fuel costs.
How about your turnover? Are you stabilized, or are you still having turnover issues?
I would say that we've never had a turnover issue, to be honest.
I mean, but you've had 2 to 3, maybe 2 to 3 people. I recall a couple of years they were losing. You were losing people somewhere on injury. You had to replace them. So it was a wrong choice of words. But are you having any turnover?
All right. Yeah. So we've had 2 officers leave service this year. One was to go work in the private sector, and one was to transfer to a larger department that made significantly more money. And we generally will run 1 or 2 open spots. Right now, we're currently at 3 because we had those 2 retirements. I am happy to report that we have 1 officer that is scheduled to start the police academy at the end of February. Hopefully, he'll have another officer joining him. He has his physical. It's like a physical acceptance exam that he has to pass to get into the academy, and hopefully we can get him in. And that will leave us with the most recent transfer that occurred in November to fill, which we're currently in the process of.
Okay, and the last question, just to kind of keep things consistent. How are you staffed now in the Detective Bureau? And then I understand detectives now include school resource officers too as well, right? So what's your staffing in the detectives?
So we have 8 overall, including our lieutenant commander that runs all of our special services, and a detective sergeant who runs all the general investigations. And yes, our SROs are part of that, but the remaining number is general detectives and a narcotics detective. So we have been stable. We have not added or reduced our personnel in there since, I want to say, about 2017, 18. Okay. When we got our staffing levels back up, we were able to reinstitute our narcotics detective.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I got.
Thanks. Anyone else? I just want to say, Chief Chambers, thank you so much for your community events team. I think that has been like amazing. And if you'd like to, toot your own horn here for a second and just tell us what they've done. I've seen several events. Yeah,
so our community event team is something that actually it came out of the chief's interview process. where we had one of the lieutenants that had gone through the process with me. And I'll thank Anita for this one because she had pointed it out as well. She said that he had some really good ideas. So one of the philosophies that I really wanted to bring forward was just round pegs, round holes. I'm not exactly the most creative person in the world, so I try to take advantage of the staff and what they're really good at. So Lieutenant Gendron's been a godsend when it comes to kind of creativity, and he really does pursue these events with dogged interest. So it's been great. Even some of the we call them quick hit events because it doesn't take a significant amount of planning. Is such like the high fives. We did the high five going into the holidays. It's nice because we get these suggestions from the community. We touch base with Lieutenant Gendron and the other officers who do a phenomenal job. And they're able to set up all these events. We're actually working with the Rotary Club right now to fund some additional events. And coming up, I believe this weekend, we have some learn to skates that are scheduled for Saturday and Sunday. We did install the rink down at the Stony Brook School on the tennis courts. I don't know if we're going to be able to pull it off this weekend because it was close to 45 degrees today. Nothing's frozen anymore. So we'll see. All the credit goes to them. It's just, all I'm doing is managing. Those guys, those men and women that are part of that team are doing a phenomenal job. That we do plan on doing the Student Police Academy again this summer. We're hoping to increase enrollment. We got a lot of good feedback, not just from the community, but the officers themselves really enjoyed being able to participate and engage with the kids. And they get to do some really fun stuff too. They get to tour Boston Harbor on the state police boat, private tour of the Boston Garden. This year we're looking, hopefully, fingers crossed, we might be able to pull it off if we can get a tour of Gillette Stadium and meet with some of the security personnel and leadership team down there. So they do an excellent job. We have a lot of stuff going on here too. So it's not just as much as the CET does kind of bring some notice and trust building. We do have a couple of other things going on. I would like to say we're going up for our accreditation, reaccreditation in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, starting February 14th. There was a public notice that just put out. Captain Pelquin and his team have been working on that very diligently. They updated the standards. Every single standard had to be looked at, which Dennis probably knows a little bit about the accreditation process, but it is incredibly thorough, very overwhelming when you try to start over. So there's a lot of work going on here. All I'm trying to do is keep my finger in as many little pots as I can to keep track of things. So they do an excellent job. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So if there aren't any other questions,
One
go
question.
right ahead, Dennis.
Who's doing the accreditation for you? What agency?
It's the Municipal Police Accreditation Commission, I believe it is, MPAC.
Okay.
Yeah, and they just updated it to version 6, 6th edition, version 2, which they dumped on us about a week before our mock assessment. But Captain Pelquin and his team were able to navigate all of that and get us through the mock assessment. So we're not anticipating any issues.
All right. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, again, thanks.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm long-winded.
That's okay. So we'll move on to public safety communications. And I believe that's Tim Whitcomb. Yep.
Hi, how is everybody tonight?
Good.
So I don't have a big story to tell you, but we have been running short-staffed for quite a while and finally coming around to we recently hired 2. Should see them both starting within the next week. And we have one that's just completing training and has finally got put onto a shift. So things are coming around, but we have been battling short staff now for a good six months and off and on over the past, since COVID really. It's hard to find people that want to do the job of 911 dispatcher. And that's nationwide. That's not just here. So definitely we've been struggling to try to get additional dispatchers for about 7 years and still trying, still hanging on, but we have a great staff. They do a great job and they've definitely been overworked for the past 6 months, but they do a great job. So if anybody has any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Thanks. Dennis, and then I'll go to you, John.
Okay, how are you doing? I have a question. As as I've been tracking your agency for a while, I do know that you have this persistent issue with, you're up generally one dispatcher short constantly, right?
Correct.
So, I understand that you were not allowed or not granted the opportunity to have a slot funded this year, so you're running one short again?
That's correct. So if I can just elaborate on that a little bit, our schedule by its nature is one short all the time because it's a 12-man schedule and we've only ever been budgeted for 11. So we're short right off the bat. We have mandatory overtime all the time.
Mhm.
We've been one short. So in reality, we're two short. And we have been actually for the past 6 months, we've been running 2 to 3 short. So we've been down to 8 or 9 active dispatchers. So it's been a tough 6 months.
Yeah, and I just wanted to just put in my 2 cents to both Dan and our new town manager, Kristen, that he has a legitimate issue there because the dispatchers are very critical towards management of crisis, emergency response and things like that. When they're running slow and they're running down that much and they're on overtime that much and mandatory overtime, there comes a point in time when, number one, you might wind up with one of them leaving because of the pain in the neck. And then the other thing too is they could always be, it could be off a game and at a time which is very important. And so those are 2 issues that I think need to get some concern when we start, dishing out the resources for the next time around. I thought that you were going to get funded this year and I was surprised that you didn't. So
I was right there with you.
I'm just going to piggyback on that. I don't know if that's something that maybe you and Dan can work out the exact numbers. If we were to hire somebody, how would that offset the overtime?
Yeah.
Dramatically.
Yeah.
If we could see something in black and white, I'd be curious to just take a look.
I'm willing.
Thanks. Great,
Thanks.
thanks.
Yeah, I'll give you a
John,
call
I'll go
tomorrow.
to
You're on.
John, I'll go to you and then Tom.
Yeah, my question is, could you describe that 12-person process? What's a shift? What is a shift? What's
Yep.
the full man shift look like?
So yep, I can do that. We typically run, well, the schedule is a 12-man schedule, so it's designed for three people per shift. And it's a 24-hour shift. We run a 4 and 2 schedule, so it's rotating. It's 4 days on, 2 days off, 6-week cycle. It repeats. That shift that's open would typically be in order to fill it properly, it would be a 3 to 11 and or day shift. We would probably lean to the 3 to 11. The 12th person would fill the vacancy that is there now. And what would really happen with that is the 12th person would be an able body that is on shift, filling our 3-3 capacity for our day shift and 3 to 11. But it would also be somebody that's available where we would not have to do forced overtime. Our minimum manning standards are 2, 2, and 2. So that third person is huge for us to reduce the overtime, reduce the stress on the dispatchers. And when you run with one open all the time, there is no relief on those shifts that third falls in it. So it does make it difficult.
Yeah, you run a 4 on it, 4 days and 2 days, 2 schedules, just like the police do.
Yes.
And if you run 3, 3, and 3, then you need more than 12. I mean,
We don't, you're right. We don't run that. We don't ever generally, unless there's something major going on, run a third on the overnights. It's generally so we run a 3-3-2 schedule, generally speaking. That's why
okay.
12 is critical to.
Okay, so yeah, that 3-3-2 works out at about 12. But when you remove that 12, that's not even counting. That's just counting your work schedule.
That's correct.
That doesn't take into consideration sick time, vacation time, and things like that.
Correct. So you see the problem.
Okay. What's your call volume? Say, you go 3, 3, and 2. Kind of, what is the experience of a caller as far as how many calls they have to handle the shift, or how many on average? You have that?
Phone calls for service you could look at the police and fire stats for that, because The
Yeah.
majority come through us. We handle, what is it, about 70, 75, 7,600 911 calls. Those are all calls. Other than that, we take in a lot of from the field calls via radio from both. As you know, we handle the District 6 for the fire department, which is the area fire services support. And then the call volume itself, I mean, literally, we're talking, what is it, like 30, 20 something thousand, 19,000 calls, 19, something in that ballpark that are actual calls that we're fielding. We take over 50,000 telephone calls a year.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Tom?
Thanks. Tim, I think you answered this for me anyway, but do you ever have occasion where you only have one dispatcher on?
No, only if somebody needs a break.
Okay. In my many years now of municipal, I've been in dispatch centers, and there are certainly times that it is not crazy, but when it does go, it is necessary to have your appropriate staffing. So I would certainly also encourage that we look for the proper staffing. We talked about sick time, personal time. The calls that you might take, you're going to hear the horror stories at times, and I think we need to be prepared also for some mental wellness for dispatchers as well. So I do think we need to take into consideration that we always think of police and fire as our frontline workers, and all respect to those departments as well, but dispatch is right there along with them. And I definitely mirror everything everyone else said about the nature and the criticality of this. So
Right. And I appreciate you saying that, because that the mental health aspect is huge in this field in general, but we have had several leave for that very reason. They still work for the town and they're great employees, but we've lost a few because of they've had the average stay for a telecommunicator is 4 years. We do better. I'm not sure how, but we do. So
I have one question.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, I have one question. Tim, and maybe if Chief Chambers is still on, I just have a question. When a police vehicle gets itself involved in a pursuit, let's say, right? How does that pursuit get managed? Do you manage it, or do the police supervisors kick in and manage it? How does that work?
it starts off clearly with communications, but the police supervisors are quickly brought in and ultimately handle it. But the communications department person, whoever's on the radios, has to maintain location times, constantly logging all that information, and probably updating area towns either via phone or radio that it's coming their way, and navigating and negotiating with that, try to figure out where everybody is.
Yeah, no, that's critical and tedious work. So if for example, the decision's made to call a chase off, the supervisor would communicate that to you?
That's definitively the supervisor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions for public safety communications? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. Thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you.
So we'll go on to the fire department. I see Chief Targ. Oh, you're muted.
Okay, better?
There you go.
Okay, thank you. The fire department this year, the fire budget itself, we're expecting about 4.47% growth in it. A lot of it is, there's contractual items in there that we have to, we're in the second year, this will be the third year of their contract coming up, the firefighters. A lot of it is parts and equipment that we're seeing an increase in. Fire gear, we saw about a 15% increase on the firefighting gear. The parts for fixing the trucks and tires, we've seen an increase with that. There's a huge time lag in getting these things. We had a brush truck break in April, and we needed a new pump for it, and we could not get the dealer could not get a Honda motor. It got delivered to us in November. Those are things that we're facing, and along with the price increases. Most of it, we are looking at a little bit of an increase in overtime also in here. We will be going for a supplemental. We've been hit hard with only a couple IODs, but the other ones are off-duty injuries. So we are lagging. We're at full capacity, 11 per shift, but these people who have injuries, they're taking a couple months to come back. We have 3 going to the fire academy this spring too, so they'll leave 3 vacancies on the shift. So we do have an article on for supplemental coming up.
Okay, thanks. Anyone have questions? There we go. Dennis.
Yeah, how are you, Chief? How you doing?
Good.
My questions, can we talk about the ambulance enterprise now, or do you just want to stick to
That's coming up later on the
Alright.
agenda, Dennis.
and I'll hold my questions till then. All right, thank you.
Chief, I had a question about, and I think I've asked this for the last several years, the HVAC system and the Boston Road
Yes.
station. How is that doing? I know it was,
Believe it or
going
not, we
through
finally
phase-
get that settled. We did have some trouble with the ramp heat last year, and it was the vents that were the issue. And there was not a bad cost at all to fix that. And we really think we got a handle on the HVAC. We've had several meetings with the architects and all the contractors in here over the years we've been here. And I think, I want to say it's been about, 2 years that we're pretty well settled with everything, and it's running smooth here.
do you happen to know offhand how the electricity and gas, the utilities are tracking in comparison to the initial estimates?
Initial estimates, I'm not sure. I remember we did provide those before. The natural gas were actually on the low side. I think it's been a warm year so far. And on electricity, we're also doing pretty good. We do have those credits that we're still getting. So right now, we're not in bad shape on either account. I'd have to go back and look at what the original estimates were just to compare it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else have questions for the fire department? Oh, John.
Chief, yeah, for a while, you were depending on ARPA for providing funds for some of your personnel, and there was also an overtime issue with that from from federal government. How's that going? Is anything changed there?
Okay, I can, well, 2 separate things. The ARPA, we are, right now, we have 2 firefighters that are funded out of ARPA. This year, they're funded at 100%. Next year, they'll be funded at 75%. So that's where you see some of our personal services on the firefighters. I think we're taking on, we're kind of weaning it in over the years. So be about a $44,000 increase on the firefighter line item. So every year it increases. It's almost like if we would have got the SAFER grant, which we've been denied, I believe 2 or 3 times that we've applied for it. The FEMA side of it, I've been working with Jody and Maria from Congresswoman Trahan's office to try to get that straightened out. We still have they paid us for about $500,000. They still owe us for about another $500,000. We were denied on 2 of the projects where we received a determination memo, and we're going to appeal them. Maria's working on her end with the Congresswoman. So hopefully we also have another avenue with the new legislature and governor. And we talked to Jim Acero, and we do have a letter that's going to him because they, as he said, they have sitting on some money out there that might be able to help us. But we do believe FEMA, in the beginning, they paid us for these expenses along with all the other stuff, the PPE and everything else. And all of a sudden they didn't change their policy, but they had a different interpretation of their policy. And that's where the problem came in. We didn't really, on some of the projects, it was May of 2022. We were still waiting for a determination from the FEMA staff whether they're eligible expenses or not.
Well, did we cover those expenses already? And if we get the money, that's what's gonna add to the coffer, or are we gonna get a big hit on the budget?
Question.
I'll let Dan.
Yeah,
Dan, go ahead.
So we applied those expenses directly to the FEMA grant, and right now it's sitting in a deficit of the 500 and some odd $1,000 that's there, and that's why we're pursuing all these avenues, is to try to recoup that so we don't have to pay off that deficit.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Dennis?
Yeah, just to follow up, I remember that when the grants were received, the different various grants, ARPA and the others were received, the town manager made it fairly explicit that we should not hire personnel with regard to those grants. I'm just wondering what forced this exception, and is there an effort, or is there anybody doing any thinking about how that is going to be absorbed if in fact you don't get the reimbursements from either the state or the federal government?
Chief, I don't know if you want to take that, or Andrea or somebody else. Maybe we need to get an answer.
I could just speak to part of it. We did apply for the ARPA funding for the firefighters. Our goal was from 2018 on our personnel study with the police and fire in the select board was to get to a certain amount of staffing on both departments, and ours was 11 per shift. So those two that we did in there in the ARPA budget, we simultaneously did apply for the SAFER grant through the federal government, and we applied several times for it, and we were denied. But the grant SAFER, the way we have it laid out in the ARPA is similar to what you would see in the SAFER grant, where we would absorb it a little bit more each year in the town budget.
Would that be something in the same idea that I mean, we just went through this exercise and a different variation with the school committee with regards to full day kindergarten. And, you know, there was a plan to phase in one as another cost goes down. Is that the same approach you're going to try to take here? And if it is, can you try to explain how it might work?
Well, right now we don't have an active application for the SAFER grant, so it's highly unlikely that we're going to get it at this point, even though they really pumped a lot of money into that. If we did, we would have transferred it from ARPA into that grant, but you know, by the time I forget the schedule on the ARPA, but I believe it's like 5 years, so we won't we absorb a little bit each year into the budget like we would have with the grant. So it'll work out about the same, I believe. I don't know if Dan wants to elaborate on that.
If anyone else has, go ahead, Dan, if you can elaborate.
Sure. So the impact on an annual basis for the two firefighters is only about $35,000 a year incrementally. So it's not a huge impact. That's why we're sort of phasing it in over a 4-year period.
Okay.
That way we can get the staffing up immediately.
Got it.
Thanks, Dan. Dennis, you all set?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Chief, I had a question on the SAFER grant. I know we've talked about this in the past, and do you have any insight as to why we've been denied?
I have my deputy chief on. He's the grant girl. He can maybe talk to that. He's been attending the after sessions to explain why we been denied on the SAFER grant and the AFG grant, which is equipment too, and we're going to apply for another one this year. I don't know, Deputy Dennehy, have a comment?
The short answer is it's very competitive. I've been on the phone with people. I've gotten their paperwork, which they filed and were successful. It all depends on their scoring and who's reading the grants at the time. Worcester got the latest one, and that was $16 million. And I talked to a couple chiefs today. Quite a bit of it is politicalness too. It's all in who you know at the state level that can pull. I read through these grants, and some of the grants that people win, I'm amazed that they get them, and then others, it's bad luck, I guess. It's quite a process, I will say it. It's goes a lot into it. Dan O'Donnell knows, because I'm always asking him for numbers and narratives and stuff like that. It's a very competitive process, and there's so much need out there that the town's been very we've been very fortunate for the town of what they've given us over the years, that we don't really have old equipment out of date, and that's a big selling point.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the fire department? I'm not seeing anything. Thank you so much, Chief and Deputy Chief. So let's go on to the building department. I'm
So
not
I'm not,
seeing,
yeah, I'm not seeing Henry, Christina.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, I can do my best to answer them.
okay. Does anyone have any building department questions? Jake?
Yeah, I had I'm looking at the two charts, number of permits issued and total fees generated. And from 2020 through 2022, there's a pretty steady increase of number of permits, but it looks like the fees generated stayed relatively flat. Do you have any insight as to the dynamic between those two?
Sure. I mean, you need a permit for just about everything you do in your house. So I think we're getting a lot of smaller permits in FY22 as opposed to sort of, larger growth projects at this point. So it all varies on a year-to-year basis. It's really.
It's just the mix of projects being done.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thank you.
Dennis?
Yeah, Dan, maybe you can answer this question too. In their summary, they spoke about building inspector coverage, wiring inspector coverage, and gas and plumbing coverage. Is there some sort of a minimum manning or some sort of a on-call requirement that they have to maintain? Is that what that's referring to?
Well, we always want to have an inspector in the office every day, just so we're not holding up building projects, because that can be very costly for developers or anybody putting forward a project. So if Henry's on vacation, we always make sure we have a substitute in there that can carry out his duties.
Are these people on overtime or are they just on straight time?
They're just on straight time.
Is that you all set,
That's it.
Dennis?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, anybody, anything else? Tom, did you have something or no? No. Okay, so let's move on to sealer of weights and measures. Anybody have any questions on that one? No. Okay, emergency management. Anything?
I do.
Dennis? I'm not sure who. Why don't you ask your question? We'll see who can answer it.
Yeah, I would think somewhere between the fire chief and the police chief and the dispatcher, we should.
And the yeah.
We should be able to get there. I was just interested because we do invest some money into emergency management, and it's there. And we just went through a pandemic, and I was wondering if somebody could give a little bit of an explanation as to how that emergency management system, if it was utilized at all, even with the Board of Health or whatever, to try to try to deal with that emergency. I'm just a little overview of that.
I will open, who wants to take that one?
I can speak to part of it. I mean, we did write a summary in one of the questions. Excuse me, we just have a call going on right now, if you hear in the background. We did a lot of communications with other agencies. We really worked with the state on leveraging PPE. There was quite a shortage in the beginning. It was tough to get. And we had the National Guard assisting with us. We're trying to get from all different avenues through the health medical region, Board of Health. But we did meet departments, the key departments, key players in this. We met regularly. We contacted other emergency management agencies. We worked together with the local towns. I know the fire and police departments did the same at the time. We talked to our counterparts about what worked and what didn't work, and shared our frustrations with them. So it did work. I mean, we didn't really have to expend a lot of our budget on that because everything at that time was getting handed out pretty good. There was no equipment to really buy at that point. It was coming in from people that had it from other parts of the country, and it was all reimbursable at that point. It was a matter of us just handling the paperwork to get the reimbursement and for all the supplies.
But did you find that the system allowed you, or at least assisted in facilitating the interplay between the state or federal and even the agencies within the town, helping to distribute things that they needed? Was it part of that? Was it the spoke in the wheel, or was it on the outside Just,
No, we had good contact with the, MEMA. We never really talked, how it goes, and we don't really talk to FEMA about this. If we go through MEMA, the state agencies about that. And they were very good with us having meetings. OEMS and EOPS were all very good with having meetings with us. So we kind of lived in front of the screen for that period of time. That those, especially from April to, the fall was a pretty busy time, and it was definitely trying to scavenge PPE and find out who had it and getting it. But yeah, the system did work the way it was expected.
okay, good, thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions for emergency management? Not seeing anything. Go on to animal control. Nope. Okay. Ambulance enterprise.
Good.
Chief, you're up again.
Okay, ambulance enterprise, the total budget actually is down 4.80. The biggest thing for going down is the indirect cost, and Dan could probably speak to that. Contractual obligation is for when the same contract, the firefighters in the same contract. Years ago, we used to, when we hire new people, we moved them into ambulance and we kind of push people up. We've gone to thinking that to make it a little bit more stable, we keep the same people in there. The group that we have now, we've had for a couple of years. So we're just seeing their longevities appear and seeing their raises, the COLAs and the step increases and stuff like that. It's a lot better managed that way. One of the biggest things again is PPE or medical supplies. The price of them going up. We've seen an increase in everything in that field, and the supplies mostly there. There's a couple things that we have trouble getting. We've gone to where the state regulates that we have to carry liquid Tylenol and ibuprofen now. And as you know, that's a tough one to get. Fentanyl, we have some options on that we're exploring with the medical director. Some of the drugs are definitely hard to come by, but we're working with the pharmacies at Little General and the medical director to get that stuff. But otherwise, we're not in bad shape on that budget.
Okay, thanks. Any questions? Dennis?
Yeah, so Chief, as we've talked over the years many times, I was very interested to note, so what is the status of the reimbursements for the service on the ambulance? Have you kind of rectified that? It kind of looks that way. Or how much bad debt are we carrying?
I'd have to pull up that question if you give me a second while I'm talking about it. I think we've been pretty good with that. And the deputy, when Deputy Bricko was here, he was really on that about the billing and being aggressive with that. And Deputy Dennehy has certainly taken over with that and working to make sure that they're getting billed in a timely fashion, make sure the insurance companies have all the information. Some of the stuff we're seeing, the insurance company will send the patient the bill if the patient doesn't sign the report. And in some cases, at the hospital, the patient's not capable of signing the report.
Yeah.
So we've been having a tough time with that. But we've been working with the billing company to find out where these deficiencies are so we can correct them. Motor vehicle accidents, it goes through the car insurance for the billing for medical. And it's kind of like the first one to the well. So we're very aggressive to make sure we have all the information for that when it gets billed out. But I think our debt is going down quite a bit. I'm looking for the questions here. If I can find them, I'll can explain a little bit more. Yeah, so we had about 132,000 written off, and those were Westford residents. I did attach the billing agreement that we have that the select board approved. I think it was in 2021. The date might be on it, or 2020, maybe just before the pandemic. We did update a little bit to make sure that if there's only 2 cases where a resident would get sent to billing, and I believe it's if they had a high not copay, but they had
Deductible.
a deductible to meet, or we know that they got the check. And in the beginning, it was hard to tell who was getting direct payments. And we've gotten, the insurance company has been better getting the billing information to the billing company about who's receiving the check. So if we do find, we do contact people that we know they received a check and, request the money. And we did have some people that decided to keep the checks. So per the billing agreement, we did send them to collections.
I have two final questions. One of them is, you make a reference to, I think you said federal government insurance. I'm assuming that you're talking about Medicaid and Medicare, right? So
Yes,
I just want to make sure that reimbursement rate has been about the same all the way along, I think, or is it fluctuating at all?
it goes up every year. We base our rates off the Medicare rate and we adjust it to stay in track with it instead of getting a weird number. I don't have them in front of me, but we might be for a BLS call, we might be 250% over a Medicare BLS call. And if we don't adjust them, then the percentages get kind of funky. So we do try to stay astride with them. So whenever they make an adjustment, we send a letter to the billing company and make the same adjustment.
All right. And the last question I have is, maybe Dan can answer this. How much how much of a subsidy is ambulance getting, if any, and how does the subsidy compare to last year's?
Give me 1 second, Dennis. This is a part of my revenue presentation that I'm giving next week. I'm listing the
I
history
don't
of
mean
the
to steal your
subsidies.
thunder.
It's a sneak preview. It'll take me just a minute to look up.
If anybody has any other questions in the meantime, while Dan's looking that up. I don't see any. Sorry, Dan, you're on the hot seat.
Under the gun. All right, got it right here. So the subsidy for the ambulance this year is 605,000. Last year is 590. The year before that was 666,000.
Okay, thank you
It
very much.
usually varies depending on the direct and indirect costs.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Actually, that you just reminded me of something. Chief said something about the indirect and direct costs changing this year. Dan, can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So they do vary quite a lot through the enterprises because of the process that we use. What we like to do is we calculate what we think the indirect and direct costs are going to be for the following year, including things like retirement, health insurance, like portion of administrative salaries and everything like that. However, what we do is we go back to the last fiscal year that was recently completed and calculate whether we were correct or not. So if we overcharge them, we give them a credit. If we undercharge them, we usually charge on top of it. So with the case of ambulance enterprise, let's see, in FY22, we overcharged them by $44,000. So they received that credit
So they get a
in this
credit.
year's direct costs.
Okay, so you do an estimate and then you make it up in the future once the actual numbers kind of come in. Okay,
That's correct. And that way there's no arguments. It's just
Yeah.
correct at the end of the day.
gotcha. Thanks.
Yep.
I think that's it for ambulance. One last call, anybody? No, I think we're good. Thank you so much,
Okay,
Chief
thank you.
and Deputy Chief, if you're still here. So that brings to a close our budget hearings for tonight. We're gonna go off and approve our minutes. Andrew, do you guys need to approve those minutes? Are they combined minutes?
I'm not sure if they're combined, but I think will approve them at our meeting, Christina,
Okay. All right.
because,
So-
yeah.
Okay, so if you want to
Yeah.
adjourn
Is
unless you
there a
have
motion?
anything.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor? Good night, everyone. Have a good
Good
evening.
night.
Yep.
Thanks. Okay, so our minutes from January 19th. Anyone have a chance to look at them? Are there any comments? If not, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thanks. And a second?
Second.
Tari has a second. Okay. So all in favor, Dennis,
Aye.
Ingrid,
Aye.
Hari,
Aye.
Heather,
I'm gonna abstain.
She's not there.
Shelby,
Aye.
Beth,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay, and I don't think we really have much for boards and committees. I know Capital is meeting tomorrow, and we have that on the agenda for next week. Dan, will you be able to send out anything from Capital like tomorrow afternoon, or will that not come to us until Monday?
As soon as we're done with the meeting tomorrow with the recommendation, I can send out what the updated capital plan is. We just received some reports today, so we should have that set by tomorrow morning.
Okay, thanks. And then I added an agenda item for old business, just in case there's anything that was sort of outstanding that anybody needed to wanted to bring up. So if there's anything.
No, I got one thing.
Go ahead, Dennis.
I just wanted to, this is a good time. We've just been through three major hearings here. And I think what's pending, I just wanted to clarify, kind of put out that where I see the issues developing. We have the first issue I think we have is with the water department's 22%, was it 22% increases planned? That's going to be something we're going to have to deal with, or at least recommend. I think a little interested in the situation involving the school committee, because now the school committee, there's about $666,000 it's an impasse here. It looks like they're holding it for the to see how the contracts go. So we may not ever know how that ever works out by the time we get to town meeting. So that's going to be something that we're going to have to work out as well. So I just wanted to kind of put that on everybody's radar, that those seem to be, to me, the two big issues that are kind of salient right at the moment. So anyway.
And we are meeting with the water commissioners on February 14th, correct, Dan? Yeah, at the select board meeting. So we'll be able to talk with the select board and the water commissioners on that 22% increase. As far as the schools, that's actually a good point. Right now, we had in our schedule to bring the schools back next week at our February 2nd meeting, if there are any follow-ups. I'm not really seeing anything that will change significantly in that amount of time. So I don't think that it's going to benefit us at all to bring them back on February 2nd. However, after March 1st, when the governor's budget is released, we're definitely going to have a meeting within that week to settle everything. So we will have another shot to talk to the schools. So unless somebody has something that they really need from the schools next week, I wasn't going to have them back.
Okay. I think it would be good for our new town manager. I'm sure she has her own techniques for dealing with these kinds of situations. But in the past, I always noted that Jody was masterful at having these reserve accounts all over the place, which were able to help her when she had to leverage and to negotiate with the school committee. Because every year it comes down to this little impasse, and that's where the real art of the town manager comes in. So just want to pass that along.
Thanks. Ingrid?
Yeah, and I know I keep harping on it, but that 14% private school special ed tuition, that I think that's why meeting early March is really important, so we can iron that out, because I'm very uncomfortable going into town meeting with no plan.
Yep,
absolutely. Yep, I agree. Okay, so I think that's about it. We have our future meetings listed at the bottom of our agenda. Again, nothing has changed since last time. So if there's nothing else, I'll call for a motion. Oh, Dan.
Just a reminder, I sent out an email about the Neshoba Tech budget presentation next Friday morning at 9:30 a.m. at the Tech. If anybody wants to go, it's usually excellent. I can sign you up if you want. So let me know. I'll do it.
thanks a lot, Dan.
Yeah, they have a great breakfast. I went a few years ago. It was really good. Okay, so I guess I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thanks. Okay, one of you can have the motion, one can have the second. All right, and we can just wave on this one, I think. All right, bye everyone. See you next week.
Bye.
See you later.